welcome to Video Game Vivisection. If you saw the prior episode, which was regarding, I've completely forgotten what we said it was about.
It was regarding stuff.
Yeah, it was about stuff.
It was about stuff. It was about video games. It was about video games.
It was about video games. But if you didn't, this is essentially a show where we nominally talk about video game mechanics, aspects of games, how they work, how they don't work, which games have done them well, and which games have done them badly. Now, the last episode we did was quite a heavy subject. It was quite a lot longer. This one's slightly lighter. That's what it was. Horror games.
It was. Yes. Jump scare. I was literally looking it up on YouTube as you were doing that intro.
I remember. Sorry, we both had a very long week.
It's been a very long week. Yeah.
But today's episode, slightly simpler, but still important to get right or get wrong. It will never have as big an effect, but as an optional thing, it will always be something players will look for, and that is collectibles in games.
Love them or hate them, they are here to stay because they've been kicking about for so long.
Yes, they are arguably one of the oldest aspects in most games that you can see.
I'm gonna say one of the oldest and most famous video games, Pac-Man, is literally just collecting stuff.
Yeah. Pac-Man,
the core gameplay loop of Pac-Man is just collecting little balls and avoiding ghosties.
With Pong, you were mostly just collecting bragging rights.
Yes, and making friends into enemies.
Mostly made enemies into enemies.
Yeah.
But the first stage, as always, is to have a brief discussion about what exactly we're defining as a collectible, because obviously there are variations. So, for instance, if you're in a game where the mission says, go collect this thing and bring it over here, not a collectible. If you find a random thing, collectible.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how we're defining this. Your fetch quest, the stereotypical fetch quest things, we are not determining as a collectible. We are determining collectibles as those little optional things, of which in some games there are hundreds, and in other games there are less. There are less things, but the things that we as players go and search around for, will go and explore the beautifully crafted, or slightly less than beautifully crafted, depending on the game, worlds, to try and pick things up and find things in the area. So that's how we're defining the collectible, not the things we get on a fetch quest, despite them being very, very, very overly done in games nowadays.
Not to mention, we're also not including anything that you would use for crafting. While it can be variable, it's not exactly the same thing. So while you might have to do a slight puzzle to get a rare material, it really has that much of an effect in a different way.
Yeah.
So a great example we're going to look at first, which is one that is a serial thing because it's over all the games, but it is one that there's a fair amount to say on, are Riddler trophies from the Batman series.
Yeah. But it's a contentious. We both agree with the Riddler trophies in that they started off as quite a nice thing because there weren't huge amounts of them. They were interesting and fun.
Yeah.
As we moved through the games, they became more of just an arduous pain in the backside, a la Arkham Knight.
Yeah. Riddler trophies are an interesting example in that, for the most part, from a design perspective, they've got a nice mix and match for what's happening on the level. They let you explore a bit, you see everything, and what you'll often see with a lot of games is designers will put small little things in the game that kind of, especially with, known properties, they'll put little kind of Easter eggs and caveats. The Riddler trophy made that a thing. For instance, the riddles, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum finding the seesaw in Arkham Asylum, or Penguin's umbrellas. It's nice little calls, but it's not, outside of telling Riddler to F off where you get a phone call about him, it really does nothing else. It gives you more experience, but it's not necessary.
I found the riddles particularly were the ones I enjoyed.
Yeah,
I think the trophies themselves became arduous in all three. There were obviously a lot less of them in Arkham Asylum because it was a much smaller game. But the riddles themselves, and the little tape recordings and stuff, I really enjoyed. And I thought it was really nice design. And then the trophies were just there. But then again, they were rewards for completing little mini challenges that tested your skills and your understanding of the mechanics of the game.
And they also gave you the patient log, so you could hear the characters talking, which obviously everyone likes because it's a bit more backstory. And they were clearly defined as a patient log. You could see which each one of them was. That was the main thing Arkham Asylum did. You had patient logs, Riddler trophies, riddles.
Yeah.
3 distinct categories, all fed into the same thing. Arkham City started to change it. You got Riddler trophies, and the Riddler trophies, if you got enough of them, unlocked, etc., etc., etc. And
Yeah.
Riddles did the same, and those unlocked the voice tapes if you got enough of them. Still mostly fine, but at that point there was something like 220.
I think there were quite a lot in Arkham City because it was a bigger game, so they could put more in.
Yeah, and the riddles were still good, but started to become a little hard to see. Some of them were a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Others were understandable, but for the most part, fine. Arkham Knight was weird.
Arkham Knight, my biggest quibble was the over reliance on the Batmobile for a lot of them.
That is understandable. The Batmobile.
I enjoy Arkham. I loved Arkham Knight and I loved the Batmobile stroke Bat Tank.
Yeah.
But considering the game railroaded you for quite a lot of the game into mandatory usage of the Batmobile, the fact that then your Riddler trophies were also then heavily reliant, a large number of them were heavily reliant on the Batmobile as well. It became very much like I'm being forced to use the car rather than be Batman and solve an intricate puzzle. Not that the puzzles were hugely intricate, but
no, but they
I was
had
kind of like,
there was the puzzles were never over the top, but there were some that were quite tricky. I mean, it was always using what you had, and it let you use gadgets a bit more than you would otherwise. Certain gadgets you never used outside of the puzzles anyway.
yeah,
You could, in theory.
My favorite ones were the ones where you had to make the Riddler bots stand on a pad, and you had to use the little voice changing
God, I hated
device
those.
to get to literally point at the thing and then get it to move to the specific position. I quite liked those because you only really ever used that, I think, in one story mission to confuse Harley Quinn's guards when you're going into the movie theater.
Yeah, you could use it against other troops in the shooting bits, but it used it like twice, and then the person mentioned and went, "The bat's doing a thing, you can't do it anymore," and everyone goes, "Oh, okay."
Okay. That
And then you
makes sense.
punch
That's
them.
why that's why you went and told Bill to go and stand by the exploding barrels. Now it makes sense.
Which you kind of want them to go, "No, I just didn't like Bill. That one I did tell you to do."
Yeah, I told Bill to stand by that electronic thing that blew up.
Bill's an asshole. He took my penny. But then, even with the Riddler trophies at their worst in Arkham Knight, they still serve. You got a reward for doing it in that
you did.
got to
And
beat up
after
Riddler.
I was gonna say after 3 games, of which Arkham City, if you got all the Riddler trophies, you did that really lame
Yeah, you
crawling
grabbed
at
him and
stealth
then
thing and
bang,
then
bang,
Predator
bang.
takedown, and that was it. You actually got a proper fight against the Riddler. And okay,
Yeah.
yes, he was in what can be described as a stupid death robot, but
Yeah,
it was a fun fight and it had cool mechanics because you were constantly switching out with Catwoman, and it was a nice little
arguably, as
ending.
pointed out, his car races and then his final boss fight were the furthest thing from a fucking riddle.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But that's just supervillains and narcissists for you. However, there was an end purpose, which is important because the other thing we have in the opening bit of this is less of that, which are we essentially discuss it as the Assassin's Creed, but it's more of the Ubisoft style.
Here are a load of different things you can collect throughout the game, and they're not going to really have an impact on anything. You might get some cool gear.
Yeah,
you might. I think Horizon does it as well. I've not played Forbidden West yet. It's on my list of things to do. I know
it does much the same thing, from what I understand. There's a little bit of lore, but it's mostly...
you get a little bit of extra lore, but it's the same with Horizon Zero Dawn. You can do there are certain things you can collect throughout the game, and they add bits of lore and stuff to it. And then I think one of the collectibles, once you finish them all, you then get the best armor in the game. And okay, that's a cool reward, but if I finished the game, why do I need the best armor if I finished it?
Yeah. Meanwhile, Assassin's Creed, famously Assassin's Creed 2, had the fecking feathers,
for fuck's sake,
which I never bothered collecting.
I did, and I fucking regretted it.
So why don't you tell us, Riku, what do you get when you collect all the feathers?
You get a fucking cape.
Oh, well, it's not even a full cape. I
You
mean,
know,
if they gave you a
it's not
Superman
even the full
cape,
Assassin's Creed thing. You get a little shoulder cape,
the
and that's it. The auditory family cape. That's it. That's
which gives you a
all of that
minor
work.
bonus to
Get a
something.
little bit. You get a minor buff. It's not even a good buff. And by the point in the game at which you've collected all the feathers, it doesn't matter anyway.
No,
And it's
because
just like, I put all this work in, all of these hours, and they gave you an emotional reason. Here are the feathers that your brother who got executed at the start of the game. Spoilers for a game that's like, what, 15 years old now?
it's an old ass game.
It's an old ass game. Spoilers for a game that's really old, but you know, your baby brother who gets hanged at the start in what is quite possibly one of the most brutal starts to a video game I've seen in a while.
It's pretty tame nowadays.
Nowadays
Things
it is.
get
Back in the
eaten.
day, it was quite a shock to watch your whole family get strung up and hanged. It was like, oh god, this game isn't pissing
Yeah,
about,
now
is
it's
it?
just the Batman effect.
Yeah.
Most heroes at some point go, "Oh, I had a family."
Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah, no, my family died. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, we expected that. This is why you're beating 7 shades of shit out of that guy over in the alleyway over there.
And I'm pretty sure it's every D&D
Yeah.
story begins with "My family died."
My family rejected me or my family died. It's just like the kind of
It's go-to. It's an
stock.
easy story.
Yeah. But yeah, and it just my problem with the feathers, right? And I'm going to go on a little rant here.
I'm going to let you go on a rant.
Right. The problem with the feathers is they're in the most arse about face places, and you have to spend ages looking for them. They're not particularly big. Bearing in mind, this was like Xbox 360, PS3 era, so the graphics weren't amazing, right? And there were these tiny little white things that just went all sparkly. So you had to climb and then try and find them. And it was a faff to find them. They were in stupid ass places. You had to go, if you wanted to collect them all, you had to go and find freaking fucking maps that would show you the potential places they were. And then once you eventually got to them, all you fucking got was the little over the shoulder fucking shimmies thing. Ridiculous. I'm done.
You're still mad about it.
I'm after this many years, I'm still fuming.
I mean, they kind of made it better in Black Flag where you got new shanties for it.
Yeah, in Black Flag it was cool. You got new songs, but yeah,
you also had to
but
stop at a lot of bullshit islands that were tiny, and it was kind of a pain in
exactly.
the ass.
You also, the worst bit was, I'm not done. Apparently
Okay,
not.
he's not done. He's
you
still
had a
going.
fucking shop in your town that you could buy better looking, freaking over the shoulder capes from. And
Well,
that was it.
Ironically, this leads us. Your little
I'm
pseudo
done
rant.
now.
Are you sure?
I'm done.
You got no more ranting.
For now, it might come back in a bit, but for the minute, I'm done.
Halfway through the rest of the episode, you just start going, and another thing. But it does lead to one of the points with collectibles is for them to work at their best, there always needs to be a purpose, something they're giving or something they're doing. So you've usually got two very distinct things here. The one we're going to look at first is when they add to the lore of the world. Now, this usually it varies in the forms it takes. They don't offer anything to gameplay. What they offer players is something to learn about the world they're in. So a great example is, as I said, the BioShock games. Or similar veins to, so you got your BioShocks, your System Shocks, your Dead Space, stuff like that. It's collectibles that give you an outlet from other characters who are explaining something that's happening or the lead up or the event. Because more often than not, in a lot of these games, they will always take place after the main event.
Yeah, like your cataclysm. It's either your games are either going to start post cataclysmic event, or stopping the cataclysmic event.
Yeah, you will never, or you will very rarely, if ever, play. I can't think of any a zombie game that takes place at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. It's always after a set point.
The only one, arguably, within that would be Resident Evil Type 0 and Resident Evil 1, because that's like slap right at the start, but it's not, it's not like you're spending time in an Umbrella lab as an Umbrella scientist doing the experiments, which, by the way, Capcom, really good idea for a game, call me.
They might, who knows, they might be watching this, they might be going, god damn, they're back.
That's a damn good game idea. Yeah, everyone wants to play a game where you run around as a lab scientist for Umbrella. That would be quite cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, as a survival horror, it's not bad. Survival horror, actually, going back to our prior episode, which we now remember what it was. Survival horror makes great use of this kind of thing because it obviously allows you to build the tension. or relieve some of the tension. Oddly enough, you can have quite a comedic one. Bioshock, it gives you a good idea of how the world got to the way it is. Last of Us similarly has a lot of more they leave a lot of their explaining to it.
I think what I like about The Last of Us though as well is that it gives you've got different aspects. So you have the world before the outbreak through the comic books you can collect for Ellie.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you can collect these comic books and stuff, and this is what the world was before. And then you collect the other collectibles like the Firefly dog tags that are like, well, these are these are the people that were fighting and are still fighting against the outbreak, and the kind of oppressive Neolithic government that's trying to control everyone and failing miserably.
Yeah,
and then the other collectibles that then kind of give you more of the information around the events prior to the game and stuff. So you've got this really good kind of like tiering of collectibles offering different perspectives on the lore, which is really nice.
But then they kind of went a weird direction with it with Last of Us 2, where, Ellie and the other character had different collectibles, and it was a weird attempt to humanize them. But Last of Us 2, I could do an episode on Last of Us 2's weird attempt to humanize things. We will do. We'll do one on narrative dissonance.
Yeah.
Probably the best way to look at it. Narrative to game dissonance. The other one that's odd is So an interesting way of looking at this is certain games don't just have that. They'll often have two different types. So Gears of War has collectibles. Same with Last of Us does the same thing, actually. We've got lore-based collectibles and then other collectibles. So, for instance, Gears of War and Last of Us, you've got newspaper clippings, emails, etc., etc. Sometimes they'll have a note on them explaining a safe combination in Last of Us, which is, it's a nice inclusion. And then you've got stuff like the cog tags and the Firefly tags. Now, the cog tags had a purpose of they unlock stuff in the multiplayer.
Which, if you're a fan of multiplayer, good for you. If you're not a fan of multiplayer, like me, then they're something to collect for the sake of it.
It's something to collect, so all those stupid skulls sitting around, you're kind of like...
So well, it's like the Halo skulls, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the Halo skulls were evil. They were
were
generally evil. They were evil to find, evil to pick up, and when you did finally find them, they gave you something
stupid.
They made
your game harder.
They were like, here's mythic difficulty, and went, I didn't want to do this. I wanted something fun.
Legendary was bad enough, thanks, but now I've got to fight flood zombies that seem to be bullet sponges.
I'm now crying in a corner, but at least the grunts are exploding in confetti, so that's great. I haven't got past this level, but each time I shoot one of them here,
I've still not got off the Pillar of Autumn, but yes, fine, we're getting little bits of extra dialogue, and the grunts are blowing into confetti. Wonderful.
Keys is now saying something, but I know what's going to happen to him, so fuck him. Bastard. But yeah, that is an example, for instance, of the Halo skulls that isn't lore. It makes no sense in game.
But then it gives you stuff to play around with in the game. It's they're collectibles that expand your gaming experience.
Yeah, which is, funnily enough, actually does put us on track for one of the other things where you have certain collectibles that essentially add more content to a degree. So, for instance, Riku mentioned Sonic Frontiers. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I've recently finished playing through Sonic Frontiers, and I absolutely fucking loved it. There will be an article and possibly a review video coming out at some point when I have a spare 10 minutes to finish stuff. But Sonic Frontiers, so obviously it is the standard open world collectathon game with a nice little difference in that if you dedicate time wandering around the map and kind of exploring and stuff, you will eventually be able to unlock the portal for Big the Cat's fishing mini game. And this is what's quite nice. So naturally, your general kind of like your core gameplay loop is run around the open world, beat up scary looking weird robot things, get keys, get gears to open vaults to get keys to get Chaos Emeralds, right? That's what you do.
Yeah.
You beat up enemies, you get gears, you play through the kind of old school Sonic sidey scrolly levels, and then you get keys, and then once you've got certain keys, you get Chaos Emeralds, you use the Chaos Emeralds, you fight a big bad, you move on to the next island, rinse, repeat, done, move on. Nice, simple core gameplay loop with an absolutely banging soundtrack. However, if you spend enough time navigating these quite large, and they are for a Sonic game, I was really impressed at how the size of these biomes were, you can unlock Big's fishing minigame, and when you get to Big the Cat's fishing hole, you can spend 20, 30, 40 minutes fishing, collect tokens, and then trade the tokens in for the keys and the gears. So you could basically circumvent half of the faffy bollocks in the game by literally just finding Biggs the cat's fishing hole and spending 20 minutes in Big the cat's fishing hole.
Yeah, which obviously I don't know how
Which
much it explains that to you in the game to get you to do that.
to be fair, you literally get so you go to Big the cat's fishing hole because there's a different one in each area. You go fishing. He goes, "Oh, cool, you've got some tokens. Look at my list of things." And then you look at the list of things, and you're like, "Hang on a minute. Those are the gears I need to unlock for levels, and those are the keys I need to unlock the Chaos Emerald vaults." So if you wanted to circumvent and not do all of the old school Sonic stuff and just play purely in the open world, you can run around, get a couple of gears, go and visit, find Big the
Yeah.
cat's place, and then get the thing. So you then don't have to worry about the collectathon. Instead, you're doing the collecting through a fishing mini game, which is very tranquil, relaxing, and has a lovely lo-fi beat in the background. But it's quite
Yeah.
a nice way that you've got, as a player, you've got an option. Now, 9 times out of 10, you will find Big the Cat's fishing mini game areas, like the places to kind of get to them, are one of the last places you'll visit whilst you're moving around the map.
Yeah.
But again, if you're focused on just exploring these giant biomes, you'll probably eventually get there before anything else. And
Yeah.
there are you have to get memory tokens as well to interact with Sonic's mates and whatnot as well. It's a whole thing.
But that's from a design perspective, that's one of the most important things about
Mm.
any form of these lore collectibles and these things that, separate into different things is the payoff and the ease of finding.
Yeah.
So for instance, lore-based collectibles shouldn't always be blatantly obvious, but if they're incredibly difficult to find, no one's going to bother. They don't give you enough to care about it.
Yeah.
The recorders in BioShock are usually pretty obvious.
Mm.
They're there. Now, they might do a thing where they tell you a room code, and you've got to remember that, but they're easy to look up and find.
Yeah.
And also yeah, go ahead.
The Easter eggs in like the things in The Last of Us, some of the collectibles stuff in The Last of Us and stuff that give you that lore breakdown are obvious enough.
Yeah,
when you're mooching around.
They exist in a space where you will always see them.
Yeah.
Or have a chance to. You might miss them, it happens, but they're never hidden away in a cupboard in another room that you would never go into because there's no point. That's one of the main things with them. If they're too hard to find, people will not bother. Now, if it's a collectible that adds more to the game, like, the cog gears, that's slightly different. However, the way Gears of War does it, which is no bad thing, is they put the skull there, and that gives you an idea that it's in this area.
You've got those visual clues.
Yeah.
That if you're paying enough attention, you'll then work out there's a skull, there will be cogs near there, which will then allow me to unlock stuff. Yeah. And it's that thinking about how you implement and what the purpose of the collectibles is. If you're putting collectibles in just for the sake of players running around and grabbing things to extend playtime, then that's
tedious.
It's boring. It's tedious, and it harkens back to the Arkham Knight problem.
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to get. You know that you're going to be able to fight Riddler at the end of Arkham Knight once you've got all the trophies, but it gets to a point where you almost forget that that's the end goal, and you're just going through the motions because it's a checklist, and it just becomes really laborious to do it.
Once you complete the biggest issue Arkham had was it never made it comfortable to go through and do it as you were progressing through the story. You had to wait till you had set gadgets and go back. It was tedious.
But then again, you've also got the idea of as well, one of the biggest problems with that is not only do you have to then backtrack a lot to find all of these different things, but you've also got this idea that actually the sheer number.
Yeah, it's painful to look at.
The sheer number of those bloody trophies. And it was the same with the feathers in Assassin's Creed. I told you I wasn't over it.
I think it was about 475 Riddler trophies in Arkham
it was
Knight.
an obscene amount. And okay, yeah, that was inclusive of like the cool little riddles and stuff, but the riddles were less intuitive in Arkham Knight than they were in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, there were weird numbers where it was just... There were a bunch where it was a ball puzzle. Some were just sitting there.
Yeah.
And it did... I will say, at least it gave you the option to find informants and find them, which does help.
Yeah.
If you look back at older games, stuff like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was very good for when it did a pan through of the dungeon, you'd get glimpses of the secret hidden chests, which it's a nice way of doing it. But I always believe that if you have a puzzle, if you have a collectible locked behind a puzzle, if the puzzle is not obvious where it is, people will not bother.
No.
If you have to go through a whole bunch of bullshit to find a complex puzzle, I'm not gonna care. If
No.
it's too far away from a save point, or you have to go round or do all this, it's not enough for me to bother doing it.
Yeah. It's trying to balance out what is the reward of the collectibles. Like, we say the kind of the Ubisoft, quote unquote, Ubisoft issue is you do these collectibles because you get some slightly better gear.
Yeah,
And that's basically okay. I might get a cool looking sword, but then you'll be looking at the numbers because let's be serious now. Nowadays, with the way that Assassin's Creed games play, we look at the numbers more than the weapon.
that's why I don't really play them.
Exactly. And then you go, well, it looks really cool, but my shit looking sword's got bigger numbers, and therefore I'm going to use that because it does more damage.
Yeah.
Or it's going to
Meanwhile,
mitigate more damage. And that way, you've then done all of this work and you've gone through all this rigmarole of finding all these freaking, I don't know what I think they're like Roman masks in Valhalla. You spend
something like
ages
that.
doing that for something that you're probably never going to use. And it's just like, and it goes, it's like what I was saying about Horizon. You spend all that time doing all those collectibles for what? The best armor in the game, which you're probably not going to use because you've already finished the story.
Also, combat in that game
And
kind of sucked.
yeah, it is a bit iffy.
So, but I mean, you look at something like Batman. That at least I know we keep going back to Batman, but it's a good example of collectibles done well and badly. It mixes it up because Batman gives you experience for the collectibles, which it's not super important. You can do without it, but it does also help. Because realistically, if you play through Batman normally, if you play through Arkham Asylum, you will get most of the upgrades, but not all of them. If you do the Riddler trophies, you will get all of them, which is the harder difficulty you need. The interesting one is when you get games that have a completely separate ending for collecting everything.
Yeah,
So,
you
for
were mentioning this before we started, weren't you? And we did a bit of research, we couldn't quite pin it down.
Yes, I remember a game where if you didn't find enough of the collectibles, you got the bad ending. I suppose the best example I can think of off the top of my head is in the Persona games. If you don't have enough Confederates, you fail. It's similar to that.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was thinking of, to be fair, actually, because
yeah,
you don't collect your confidants, but you have to spend time to level them up and stuff, and then you get this really cool cutscene with like all of your confidants at the end if you've got them all maxed out. It's really cute, and it's like, oh, power of friendship.
I mean, Persona, Pokemon, their collectibles are more
Yeah.
collecting individual creatures, which is an aspect of the gameplay, so it's not really the same thing.
Yeah.
However, you mentioned that Stanley Parable that has a special ending if you do have all the collectibles.
Yeah, a little bit of research from the new version that came out. Apparently, there's a collectibles ending, which then, if you do that and something else, you then get an epilogue for the game.
Yeah.
Don't know, haven't played it.
But it's something.
But it's something. It's and like we said on the last episode when we were doing horror and stuff. Let us know if you can think of a game where the collectibles, where if you didn't have certain collectibles or enough of them and it gave you the bad ending, let us know what it is, because it's something that we both vaguely remember, but we can't remember which game specifically.
It rings a bell, and it might be retro, and funnily enough, that's leading us to
our last topic, isn't it?
Yes, which is because collectibles, they've taken a different form now to what they used to do. And retro games, collectibles were a whole other ball game.
Yeah, I think the best examples that I was thinking about when we were kind of planning this episode was the gems in Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, could also be replaced with the eggs in Spyro or the fuzzy whatever they are in the Croc games.
Yeah,
any platformers,
any of those old school, any of the PlayStation Golden era platforming games, and then even moving forward to like you collected all those things, you got all the gems, you unlocked a new boss fight at the end of Crash. You got all the eggs in Spyro, you unlocked different, adaptations and different things and whatnot. And as you worked your way through each of these old school platforms, the collectibles were tied to not the critical path, but they were tied to a kind of like a sub part of that critical path.
And they gave you bragging rights.
And let's be serious now, the gems in the Crash Bandicoot games some of them were bloody hard to get.
They still are. The new Crash Bandicoot has a similar thing where you get all the gems and it unlocks costumes.
Yeah.
It might just be because I'm old and crusty now, but I do not have the hand-eye coordination for these things anymore.
I played through the new Crash game when it came out a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, this isn't going too bad. Then I think I tried it in the weird negative world thing, where everything has like the weird blue and black filter over the top. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I was like, shit, am I old?
I didn't really get the point in that. It seemed a bit random as an addition that was kind of okay. But the reason they put it in these games, because, from as we use the ever current phrase, from a design perspective, the advantage to it is it gives people a reason to continue playing.
It improves that replayability factor, doesn't it? And it means that people are, we live in an age now where video games don't cost 20 quid like they did when we were kids. Because
No.
yes, we're both that old. They now cost 70 to 80 quid.
And replayability is a big thing.
Yeah. You're not going to spend £70 on something you're going to play for 8 hours and then never touch again.
But unfortunately, a lot of games now go for the more live service view, which
we'll do an episode on, because
sure,
we have strong opinions on live service.
But as a brief tirade to it, live service collecting constant armor upgrades and whatever the variation of the armor upgrade in, it's not the same thing because it is constant. There is no end goal. If you look at the old games with their collectibles, or even, the games we talked about with their collectibles, there is always an end goal. And that's an important thing design-wise, because it essentially gives players both the ability to state, I have done this, show it to their friends, which will get their friends to then go, I want to do this. It gives a sense of completion. Even the very worst of them give a sense of completion. If it never ends, it is redundant.
Yeah. Well,
there is no point.
The live service have tagged onto the MMO ideology, where you work for a couple of months playing an MMO, get the best gear, and then you've got the best gear for all of a month, and then the next patch comes out, and then the best
gaming PC.
the best gear you've got in an MMO is good until the next patch comes out, where they put more gear in that might be better, or if they're on a, it might be alternate patches. So I don't know, you'll be like, best gear on this expansion's launch, first patch comes out, cool, my gear's better than that. Next patch comes out, oh great, I've now got a reason to come back because I have to get that really, really good gear. And I speak from experience because I spent years of my life playing Final Fantasy 14 with that mindset of must have best gear.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like, if you're looking at a game that does collectibles badly, a lot of open world games do not do. I mean, we've said Assassin's Creed, but others have quite a big issue with doing them for no actual purpose.
And this is it, isn't it? It's our
Mad
collectibles.
Max, for instance, there was no point.
No.
You could just PS2 era games had quite a lot of it where it was bad. If I'm thinking of anything, for instance, the Area 51 had a very weird design for it on PS2, which is dating myself.
Yeah.
Where you had to scan a thing, but it never told you exactly what you had to scan and where, and you could scan everything, but not all of them gave you a thing. That's a point where it becomes too difficult to find it, so you don't bother looking for it. In a world where there's no, this was back in a world where there's no internet to check everything.
This is the point though, isn't it? Like, but by comparison, I'm noticing a trend here on games by a certain studio that have good collectible design in them, because I'm about to bring up Jak and Daxter, who, much like The Last of Us, much like Crash Bandicoot, the original games,
it's all Naughty Dog.
We're Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog, you're good at developing games with collectibles in, because the first Jak and Daxter game, you had to get all the power cells, and I think there were like 120 of them across the entire game. So you beat the final boss, and then it was like, well, you now need to go back and get all the power cells, and then what you got at the end of that was you open this big door that basically, and this big shining bright light, and the characters are like, oh, it's this big thing. You don't know what it is as a player, because Naughty Dog were like, well, this is going to be really, really important because it's going to be the thing at the start of the second game, which turns out to be a weird spoiler for a game that's about 20 years old. A big portal that takes you to the future.
Because there's a whole bunch of bullshit with
because
Jack's
there's just a whole thing with, it starts off as a really good game where Jak doesn't talk. The second one, it becomes kind of like GTA for kids with sci-fi bullshit, and then the third one is an Edge, and then the third one's even edgier and fucking brilliant. But you collected all these power cells, and then it did that, and then in Jak 2 and 3 you collected precursor orbs, which weren't hard to spot. They're like these floating little terracotta eggs. And there's quite a lot of them throughout the games. They're quite easy. They're not easy to find, but you'll spot one in the distance. You'll be like, how do I get them? Yeah, they exist. You can spot them, and you can, you then have to work out how to platform over to them. And they unlocked cheats. And they are, it wasn't just, you had your big head mode and your black and white mode and your hero mode and everything, which was effectively New Game Plus and whatnot. But then it also unlocked other things like, here is a cutscene player, and here are some cool little things like unlimited ammo and all these other things, which we don't really have them in games nowadays, to be fair.
Cheats being unlocked were a weird period. I mean, But then the PS2 period had a lot. I mean, you could see the rise of edge in video games just
Yeah.
watching the PS2 games category.
Oh, the PS2 era was
Started out
the
lovely,
edge. It was
ended
the
kind of
moody, edgy. And then we went into the PS3, Xbox 360 years where it just became edgier and edgier and edgier.
I count those as the brown period where it was just
Yeah.
how many
How
dirty
much
shooters can
brown?
we have?
How
There we
many
go.
brown and grey shades can we have in a game?
Or you get into the, if you're talking about collectibles, you could always argue stuff like Borderlands with its
Yeah.
guns. You don't need them, but they are a constant. But
Yeah.
Borderlands is tricky to quantify with its collectibles anyway, because
they brought the Borderlands 2. I remember I've spent hundreds of hours playing Borderlands 2, but like you did the raids to get really awesome guns so you could then do Ultimate Vault Hunter.
yeah.
And I don't know why you put yourself through that, but quite a lot of people, including myself, did. And it was like, okay, my guns still aren't great. Go back, retry, get better stuff, do it again, and kind of just rinse, repeat kind of thing.
It kept you playing the game.
It did.
But I always found it to be collecting. It's hard to say, but I always find collecting. I want to be able to collect things that sequentially get better, but I don't want them to become redundant when it comes to collecting equipment. But that's a whole different thing. That's progression, etc. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
There is one type we haven't spoken about, which is it is a type, but it's very specific, and one game series does it more than any other, which is Lego games, which are entirely just collection.
They are collectathon games. I mean, the more recent ones have been.
They have a plot.
They have a plot. To be fair, they've always all of the Lego Star Wars, the original Lego Star Wars games on PS2 and Xbox, they had the plots of the films, but they were
bare bones.
It was just bare bones, and it was just find the mini kits, find the studs, find the red bricks, buy characters, and they are games that are, and they are fun. I love
for a bit.
I love
they get boring.
I did find as I've gotten older and a lot more cynical, I look at the older ones now and I'm like that. But then like the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, I'm like, oh yay. And then I'm running around it like, oh look, I can get all the collectibles. And I'm like, oh, the bastards have got me again.
Well, that's the thing. As a design point, there's a similarity with collectibles and games that's very similar to gambling.
It's addiction. It's tapping into that addictive part of the human brain, which is really, really, really unethical designing, but it does work.
Addiction plus feedback.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Jack and Daxter, when you collected the thing, they did a little dance and a movie, and it all went through. Which, if you see other games, didn't happen.
No.
Lego, there's a goosh.
Yeah, you get the cool sound effects, you get the little confetti blasts, everything else. But then Lego games, you can also unlock cheats.
Yes, you can. But then when you actually play them, you realize the cheats are completely redundant because I think not complex.
No, but I think the only ones that are actually vaguely helpful are the ones where you basically have a stud multiplier.
Yeah.
And then you just basically make infinite money.
But the
question, don't have to worry about anything else.
The question becomes, while it may be morally dubious, does the feedback loop is that a good design choice? Now, that's slightly more complex because in modern day games, you get the feedback is far less obvious. But these are also games, the ones we discussed, are for older people. So, you know, the lore, the discussion, the reading. For a kid,
that instant gratification and instant feedback is going to be really, really useful. And to be fair, though, I just said,
it keeps them entertained.
Yeah, but I just said,
if you're Riku,
as a 31-year-old imbecile, I look at it and I'm like, oh, cool, confetti and pretty colors and cool music, and then I'm like, oh. No.
So as a 32-year-old, I'm far more jaded. That extra year.
I look forward to playing.
Emotionally.
I look forward to playing the Lego Star Wars game next year and just being like, nah, you not got me this year. Apparently, an extra 12 months on this planet has made me twice more cynical.
I want more gore and doom. This is all depressing.
The world isn't this bright and colourful with cool, fun things. It's dark and depressing, and my video games need to match that.
Therese Corfey is telling me I have to get used to eating turnips and living off.
Oh, yes.
Nobody wants to eat turnips. Turnips suck.
Oh, turnips are grim.
Yeah, they are, but they're apparently what we've got to eat. Brexit Britain. But that's not the point. So obviously what we've gone over today is a whole bunch of games that they're not all the games, we've already stated. There are many games for collectibles. It's a
Yeah.
very common thing. We've looked at a few different ways that they do it. Design-wise, there's always the choice of if you go for more instant gratification or if you go for more including the player in the world. There's also complexity. Puzzle collecting, puzzles are gratification. Completing a puzzle, you think, I'm smart, I've done this, I'm smart. But too puzzles, too complex, too annoying, people don't want to do it. For instance, the Atomic Heart game we both just played that has come out has the lock puzzles, which do flash, 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 flash. I hate them.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, I struggled with those, and then on our recent-ish live stream of the first part of Atomic Heart, I also struggled to find a map that was down a corridor behind a door I opened up, and I backtracked and spent 10 minutes with half the chat yelling at me. Editor Callie was apparently in full-on screaming at the telly mode.
He's always
telling me
screaming at
that
something.
yeah, but this was like full on. Oh my god, you absolute idiot, Riku! What the hell are you doing? The chat has done. I've told you what to do. Oh my god! And I'm like, oh, it's because you're on a 10-minute delay. So it was really funny for me because I then was reading all those comments. I'm like, oh, Ed Kelly's finally caught up with us.
I mean, the bigger question is how you have a 10-minute delay. I'm not going to go into it.
Apparently there were internet problems while Callie was watching it.
I
just tuned in late, didn't he? Really? That's the
all
real question.
Yeah. Atomic Heart has a similar thing to Bioshock, which is finding they do a thing where they have two different types of.
I like that they're pocket watchers. I like the design of them.
But they give you one where it's a dialogue one where someone talks and ones where you read it. That's also very good. We've looked into the way that horror games can use it to increase attention in the area, your Dead Spaces or your Resident Evils. We've also looked at the ones where they give you, it's clear where they are. Now, I do want to specify now. I didn't specify then, but I will now. Clear where they are does not mean easy to find.
No,
easy to gain.
It also doesn't mean throwing a shit ton of icons over a mini map or world map that basically are go to these points and pick up the thing. That is not fun or good design. That is just chucking. That's like a small child throwing sprinkles over a cupcake.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not good design.
No, it is cluttering.
Yes.
And it can actually turn people off your game because they will start to play it and they will go, this is too much stuff for me to figure out. And that happens. Just Cause, and that has a big problem with it.
A lot of AAA games do it though.
Yeah, they do.
A lot of AAA games do it where it's littered maps, and then they're like, "Oh yes, but you can filter your map icons." I'm like, I don't want to fucking do admin when I'm playing a video game and filter shit. I do that enough on spreadsheets.
Also, you haven't explained what the filter actually is.
Exactly.
You said filter quests. Now I don't know where the quests are. I'm confused. The side quests, normal quests. What's this? What's that? Why is this a square? I don't know what's going on.
Yep.
Or you have games that imply complexity. I mentioned Watch Dogs when I was speaking to Riku. Watch Dog Legions has a whole bunch of stuff you can collect. Entirely redundant when you get one character class that lets you fly a thing. Makes it, there's no point to it. Half of the fun is having a puzzle, but a puzzle that isn't super difficult. Or you can go with far more vague. Dark Souls, if you're looking at a lore perspective, has a really interesting way of doing it, where it's you only understand the plot reading things. On the other hand, though, it means certain people aren't going to get that invested because you don't want to collect everything.
No, and also with that as well, some people don't want to spend every moment reading on a pause screen or sitting there reading all the item descriptions in your inventory when you could be walking around having your ass handed to you by,
Well, some of us are good at the game, so
Ito. Well, yeah, all right, all right. I don't claim to be good. I don't claim to be good.
Some of us are good.
I know I suck.
Some Riku was playing through Sekiro. Go watch those if you want to see.
Oh yeah, if you want to watch a grown man genuinely if you want to watch a grown person's soul slowly fade away over 2 hours.
I like to say if you want to see someone not progress, if you want to see anti-progression, that's
it's basically the Sekiro stream has just been a literal extended episode of how not to play.
How long did you take fighting the guy on the horse?
About an hour and a half.
Yeah, see, that's a lack of progression.
It's fine. I spent 2 weeks not getting past the bloody chained ogre. 2 weeks.
don't even remember the chain
I know this is how
That's how
bad
little
it
he
was.
means to me. Or shit, I don't know. The yoga might be.
They're gender inclusive. It could be whatever. But yes, 2 weeks to get past the chained ogre.
Did you fight Madden Butterfly yet?
Nope.
I'm waiting for that. That's
On the horse dude. We're on a bit of a hiatus at the moment because I'm playing Atomic. Because
wait, you
hopefully
still
we're
haven't
still playing
beaten the
Atomic Heart.
horse, dude.
No, I beat the horse dude. It just took me about an hour and a half to do it.
So you've got to beat Madden Butterfly. She's next.
No, I've got Juzo the drunkard.
Oh, that's barely a fight. Deal with Madden Butterfly.
I thought I got to do Juzo before Madden Butterfly.
Madden Butterfly's in the past when you're in the burning building.
Yeah, so I got to beat Juzo the drunkard first.
Oh.
Because I haven't even beat him yet, see?
It's another 6 streams before you get there.
Probably, yeah. We might finish Sekiro at some point by 2023's end. Who knows?
That's being hopeful. But anyway,
very hopeful.
I think that is everything we can really do on it. As I said, it's not as heavy a topic as the last time because we're just coming back. We're going to work on getting these slightly more frequent because just a whole bunch of shit's been going on.
There's so much, and they are interesting topics to discuss. And yeah, if you've got any ideas as well, if there are any aspects of game design that you want us to delve into and pick apart while it's still alive and bleeding on the table, then please do let us know in the comments because we are very up to.
By Vivi.
Yes, which is why they're called Vivisections.
Don't sue us, Final Fantasy.
Please don't Square.
Square. Now they're going to sue us because I've just called them Final Fantasy. Actually, no, they're not putting Final Fantasy VII Remake on Xbox. So
I was going to say you're allowed to be salty about this. I am going to enjoy playing Rebirth later this year.
Or Final Fantasy 16. That's not going.
I'm going to enjoy playing both of them on the channel on my Space Whale. While you're told you're not allowed to have exclusivity to Activision stuff because apparently
it's also now happened with Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah,
it's now coming on PS5, but not.
So ridiculous.
That's we won't do a vivisection on and exclusivity because that is
it's a hot topic and it is ridiculous and it's pathetic. Basically,
it's my view is video game design.
It's not. It's video game management, which is just in itself stupid.
That's a whole different. I mean, that's crunch and everything else. That's
stuff. We're not going to touch that with a barge pole. But if there's anything design related you want us to do, let us know in the comments.
And if you can think of any collection games you enjoyed or hated, always put them in the comments. We love to see what people are saying or what they're thinking. We are aiming to get guests to come in and talk with us as well. We're waiting to see what happens with that, so that's always great. Yeah. Hopefully we'll do this again sooner. I've been Josh.
I've been Riku.
And thank you for joining us for Video Game Vivisection.
And we'll see you next time. Please do remember to hit that like button and subscribe to Robot Republic for all of our new content. Bye, guys.
Riku will never finish Sekiro.
I will not. I might. Shut up. Bye. There we go. Oh, do you want me to do the intro?
I'm just going to stare at you until you do.
Hello, and welcome back to Video Game Vivisection on Robot Republic with me, Riku, and my lovely, somewhat deranged co-host, Josh.
It didn't come out the fucking headphone.
Fuck's sake.
Hi.